you mentioned that your book covers a number of different topics, and certainly many are health related. One is vaccines, and then the first thing you touch on is that these instruments of health are very toxic. Can you explain that and your conclusion into that whole system?
My grandfather, I mean, the family legend, which I have no reason to disbelieve because this is what he did for a career, was that some part of his PhD or some advanced degree was he accomplished or completed by setting up the Sabin lab, and Albert Sabin did the live polio vaccine. So my grandfather was in early on that. He didn't build it. I mean, he wasn't Sabin, but he later was into something called cancer retrovirology, and he's published a lot of stuff, I believe, on, I want to say back in the 40s or no, it would have been in the 50s. There's some polio stuff with him, Robert C. Mellors. And the field of cancer retrovirology was metamorphosed into the field of HIV-ology, as I call it. It's not a science, it's a religion. And that's the family business, you know. So the idea of vaccines was not controversial in my family, but the irony is, even though my grandfather worked on it, he wouldn't. When my mother and her brothers were in school in the 50s, and they were rolling out the vaccine, they enlisted a lot of the young people to be what they called polio pioneers, to be injected with an experimental, you be a pioneer, see what happens. Well, a lot of people became paralyzed. There were more incidents of polio. They called it the Cutter incident, but my grandfather said to my mother, this is according to my mother, "You're not getting that. You're not going to be a polio pioneer. We don't know what that's going to do." So, you know, the inside sometimes has a better idea. It's funny, a lot of the time the inside, in its conservative estimations of its own merit, its own science, the inside of the ivory tower or the priesthood or the priestcraft, agrees with the critics. But in between is the interference, the propagandists, the media, who are handmaidens, servants to the Anthony Fauci's, director of the NIH of the world, who make the public pronouncements about how you're all supposed to be terrorized because the seagull sneezed in Sri Lanka, so we're all going to die tomorrow. You know, the seagull has a cold, we're all going to go. Well, it's propaganda, and they get us moving. Vaccination is an interesting topic. It's chapter 5 of the book, and I hope you'll look it up. It's now available on Kindle. I was agnostic, really, to it to some degree. I thought that perhaps it had gotten rid of polio. I did the deep research and found that the recorded history, the public history of vaccination is riddled with argument every step of the way. There were groups saying, you're killing more people than you're helping, you're killing more animal flocks than you're helping, you're taking pus from animals. Why is it called vaccination? Spanish, French-speaking people know vache or vaca, means cow. They used to scrape pus and blood from the bottom of cows who had cowpox and jam it into people's arms. They found an increase in disease from doing this sanitary practice. Big surprise. Well, we're not very far away from that. We now take monkey kidneys and guinea pig and hamster kidneys, testicles, ovaries, certain kinds of cellular material that they can use as a substrate. And we stimulate these with chemicals to keep them growing. And then they put some metals in them and then they put polysorbate in there and a little bit of mercury. No, they haven't taken it out. Don't let them lie to you. But that wouldn't be the problem. They take this stuff with animal and human genetic material, proteins, and they inject it into your bloodstream and musculature. Now I can breathe in my lungs, and if I breathe in poison, I can breathe some out, but it's bad, but I can breathe some of it out. And if I eat poison, some of it will get through the intestinal lining, be absorbed. Some of it will pass through the bowel, and I will vomit some of it. There is no vomiting system in my blood. It's a trap. To quote Admiral Akbar, it's a trap. Sorry, Star Wars reference out there. So you inject it into the blood, and you have a massive inflammatory response. Every nerd, whoever watches, went, yeah, that's right, I know my Star Wars. But the blood is a closed circuit. Oh, okay, you run it through the liver. Well, listen, you can't breathe it out. So you put foreign proteins, metals, animal and human DNA. This sounds like the island of Dr. Moreau a little bit. It sounds, this is why in the movies when the good guy is being held hostage by the bad guy who's gone crazy, he holds a syringe to his neck. Because we know and somehow innately that injecting somebody into their bloodstream is bad.
Mm-hmm.
This is bad, don't do that. But we do it to small children. And I'm talking to a friend of mine today, an hour and a half ago, and she said, oh, you know, a 9-year-old girl who had had allergies and was not vaccinated until she was 9 was caught up by given a dozen injections in a day. She became autistic at the level that she lost the power of speech. She was a fully functional 9-year-old. The parents now have to live with the fact that by trusting their doctor, they essentially killed the daughter that they knew. There's no fun in there. There's no joy in that. You know, that's what these moms deal with. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they do it, and they don't go crazy, and they don't just start shooting, but they don't. I pity the doctors' souls who don't pay attention and don't just listen. These mothers aren't lying. They have no reason to lie. You know, when you see it happen that quickly, in a moment, from moment to moment, you have to ask yourself, is this really a science, or have we replaced some frankly old ritual? Like we used to have baptism, whatever your religion is. I lean east, so don't hang me up on any particular thread. But we used to welcome children into the world through a certain ritual. And we sort of get rid of that. We're secular. We don't, you know, all that's voodoo now. We don't believe in it. So now we inject them. And that's ritualistic too. I think that's cause for consideration, and I think we should probably really listen to the mothers who are saying you're killing children and you're damaging, you're destroying so much. And if doctors can't just do that, can't just stop and say, actually you're right, I'm going to listen to the patient. You know what's funny? My uncle, John Mellors, is a so-called AIDS physician, and he's actually published in a popular journal criticizing patients who are complaining that the AIDS drugs are too toxic. And he shrugs his shoulders, as he might. I don't know, we're not friends. I mean, I've never had bad words with him, but this is a published article. And he says, oh, well, it's better than whatever. Oh, well, what are we supposed to do? So the drugs, the AIDS drugs deform the body. They absolutely deform the body, and it's hideous and grotesque and brutalizing, and it kills people. And his response was, and that's doctors. They're that insulated. They're looking at this tiny piece. The whole patient is here. The whole person is here. The whole world is here. They see this. I have an opinion about it, I guess.